Everyone, and thank you for watching another episode of Her Success. Today we have Joe Kirschner with us, who's with Primrose, and we are so excited to have Joe as our next guest in this series. Joe has developed a wonderful brand at Primrose. She's devoted the majority of her career to pioneering breakthrough strategies for delivering high-quality early education and care. As the CEO of Primrose Schools since 1999, she has led the strategic growth of the company from 4 locations in Georgia to a national brand recognized as an industry leader and innovator. Joe joined Primrose in 1990 as a vice president after serving as a marketing consultant to the founders. She has been instrumental in creating and expanding the franchise model that now includes over 460 independently owned and operated schools coast to coast. Today, she continues to shape the strategic direction of the company and the rapidly expanding franchise system. She's a passionate believer in giving back, and so Joe has also founded the Primrose Children's Foundation and launched Primrose Promise. This is the company's corporate social responsibility program, which helped the Primrose organization fulfill its mission to forge a path that leads to a brighter future for all children. Joe has been recognized over the years with numerous awards, including the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year, the Silver and Gold Stevie Awards for Female Executives of the Year, the National Association for Female Executives, Women of Excellence, Community Service and Education, Franchise Update Magazine's Top 24 Women in Franchising, and the International Franchise Association's Bonnie Levine Award. So welcome, Joe, and I know our listeners want to hear from you directly, and we're so honored to have you.
Thank you, Emma. It's a pleasure. It's absolutely a pleasure. Thank you so much.
So, like me, you've been in franchising for a number of years, and we've led brands in different industries. So why don't you tell our listeners just a little bit about your background and how you got to Primrose?
I'd be glad to. And I can't believe it when I think back on it, because it will be my 30th anniversary at Primrose. When I began my career, I really had my degree was in marketing, and I had a pathway in my mind of where I was going. And I'm sure when you talk to other leaders, people don't always end up doing what they thought they were going to do. Retail merchandising was what I wanted to be in, and I wanted to be really successful at it. And my first career position was as a manufacturer's rep for Procter Silex Corporation. It required me to travel throughout the Southeast, and my husband also was a manufacturer's rep for a Johnson & Johnson veterinary division, and he also traveled the Southeast. That was fine until we had our first child. And because we both had moved from the Northeast to the South, we had no family. And interestingly enough, that having my first child is what changed my career path, because finding quality care and early education for my son just wasn't here in the South at the time. And it led me to making a career change where I would have control of my career in terms of flexibility, so my husband could maintain his. And I launched a company called Creative Logistics, a marketing company based in Atlanta, more of a regional. And that eventually led me to the founders of Primrose, because they engaged me to help them move their half-day preschool into a full day, what we actually established as educational childcare. And then they engaged me further to help them with developing their franchise concept. Eventually, they convinced me to leave, sell my company and join them. And yeah, that was in 1990. So it's been an amazing journey of developing a company with a passion for something that I personally experienced. So authenticity and passion for something you love does often lead to a successful pathway.
You know, I agree with you. My pathway isn't where I thought I was going to be either. As you and I have gotten to know each other over the years, my passion has been in education. That's what I went to school for. And I've learned, though, over the years that I get to be in education every day. But it's certainly the pathway that where I am is not where I thought I would be, but still, like you, so passionate about helping families keep loved ones at home. I know that you have been very innovative in your leadership in Primrose. And as I recall, and I don't remember the specific accreditation, but you worked for years, as an example, with an accrediting body that had never accredited early childhood education before. And that was such a priority for you. So why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about that from a drive and get good things done for your organization?
Sometimes on your career pathway, there's a huge advantage to drive and persistence. And I didn't know what I couldn't do. So to me, it made no sense when early education had such a profound impact on education. A child's first 5 years of life is so important to the foundation that they have for when they start school. And to me, it made no sense that we started accrediting schools at kindergarten or first grade in public or private schools. So because this company started in the education business and they were a preschool, to me, it made sense that we should be accredited. And I called the accrediting organization, back then they were called Advanced Ed, today they're Cognia. They accredit elementary, middle school, high schools, colleges, and today they're international. But back then it was US based, and each year, I just made up my mind each year I was going to call and request. So it did take me 7 years. The 7th year, a book had come out about brain development. It was getting a lot of coverage in the media. And I sent the book to the same person I had called every 7 years, about a month before I actually called him. And he took the call and he said, "You are very persistent." And I said, "Well, I really, really believe that you need to consider accrediting really high quality preschools." And he said, "Well, we don't have an accreditation for that, but we've had a board conversation and we would like you to come talk to us about helping us establish it." So Primrose helped the Advanced Ed accrediting organization found an accreditation for early childhood education in the education continuum. Today, I sit on the board for Cognia, which is the new name. It's been renamed a couple of years ago. And we as leaders are influencing part of our mission, which is to forge a path to a brighter future for all children. So there are so many ways you can do that. But when you plant those seeds and you stay persistent, not a lot of people have the patience to take years and years and years to get where they want to go. But the truth of the matter is most leaders will tell you pathway to success is not a quick pathway. Usually it's not the case.
That's true. And I have found in my career that successful people find a way to say yes and get to a yes. As long, of course, as it's educated. But it's easy it would have been so easy or average to have made the call once, twice, maybe 3 or 4 times and stop after that. But due to your drive and passion and belief in the importance of early childhood education, and like you as a mother and young mother, it was difficult. And I was in Georgia at the time, quite frankly, to find good quality early childhood education and childcare for children before preschool. And so it's one of the reasons that I've been so fascinated and watching Primrose for many years as I've gotten to know you and the success that you've had. So that's just one example of many. And obviously you've been highly recognized for those awards. So I know the typical question is, tell me about your biggest accomplishment. And everyone, starts to talk about their professional, but I know that for you and I, our biggest accomplishments are our families. And so, and I know that.
Yes.
and you have two wonderful children, and Rick, your husband. And I'm certainly, I think our listeners would love to hear how you balance that. But outside of that too, what would you say your biggest accomplishment was in addition to your family? Not instead of, but in addition to.
So, that balance between career and family, work and play has had a huge influence for me, both personally and professionally. I think if you are stable and happy in your personal life, then you can dig deep and invest a lot of yourself in your career. And when couples can do that for each other, that's really a huge advantage, I believe. So you're right, family first, but that desire to balance my career and family led me to really deep dive into early education and the theories. My background was not education. And deep diving into it, I saw very traditional structured programs, mostly in church preschools, and then Montessori schools, very play-based, creative environments. And there was like a line drawn, you either did one or you did the other. And there was all this research about both of them, how both of them brought different skill sets, helping children nurture different skill sets that were so important for later in life. And so over time, at first we bought curriculums off of the shelf from publishers, but over time I developed a business plan and brought it to our board to develop a proprietary curriculum. And we went out and found early learning experts in all the domains of early learning across the country and created a board, and then engaged them as consultants to develop a proprietary curriculum. And interestingly enough, we named it Balanced Learning. And it was the balance between more of a Montessori child-initiated approach, which is very important for creativity and critical thinking skills, and then a teacher-guided approach, which is developing and guiding children on learning the academic skills they need, with a very strong focus on life skills and character development. And then we were able to embed that into our schools. And so we have a proprietary curriculum that is a blend of the leading philosophies. And I think at the end of the day, that's going to be my greatest accomplishment. Of course, I'm very proud of growing an organization that is now nationwide. And we'll hit $1 billion in system revenue. We're projecting that next year, early next year. The opportunities of growth are still, the runway is very long here in the US and eventually international. But long after I'm gone, the philosophy of balanced learning will be influencing children, which is children are my greatest passion, and they are our future, right? So I hope and believe that over time, even though life changes, the world changes, there are certain things about early childhood that are universal and always will be, about skill sets children need to be successful. And I believe that balanced learning will live on long after I am not here to see it. My grandchildren have attended Primrose schools, many of my friends, and hopefully my great-grandchildren will one day.
And, we've talked about balanced learning because we both are so passionate about education. And I do think it's just an amazing approach. And certainly it will be a great legacy for Primrose. I'll also, for me though, in knowing you, it's also about your development of team and leadership and culture. And as a female leader, that has been really important in Primrose, and I've been to your offices and you can feel it when you're there. And so talk a little bit about your approach into developing talent within your team.
So it was interesting. We went to a strategic planning retreat the last 3 days. And while we were there, I opened one of the mornings talking about how much I studied other leaders over time. And one of the leaders, the books that we all know, Good to Great and Built to Last, The Speed of Trust, right? Those books had huge influence on me. But I also looked at the brands that I just admired significantly. One of them was the Ritz-Carlton. In fact, I had this goal, and I'm not going to make it. I doubt I will make it, but I had this goal of one day going to every Ritz-Carlton in the world. It was my bucket list. That's a pretty expensive goal, but who knows? Maybe I'll find time to do that. But the point of this is I had the opportunity through a relationship to meet the co-founder of the Ritz-Carlton. And in that conversation, one of the things that he impressed so much upon me, how they got the consistency of service excellence, was the hyper focused first priority on people and culture. And a lot of people say that, but they don't live it. They don't live it. And really, you can't build a culture where people are first and they're passionate if you don't recruit for the people that are aligned with whatever it is you believe. We believe in, and it's our philosophy in our schools, who children become is as important as what they know. Because your character and your beliefs have a lot of influence on who you are as a person and how well you will do in the things you aspire to do and learn. So we recruit that way. We recruit for who you are. We can teach you skill sets. And now more than ever today, information and knowledge is at your fingertip, right? Mm-hmm. So we know the 21st century skills are going to be people who are confident, people who are honest, people who have good interpersonal skills, people who share the passion for whatever it is you're doing, because people thrive and excel when they're in an environment doing things they love. And we're a purpose-driven brand, so we recruit for that. So that's number one, people and culture. And second is the mission and vision and living it. Not words that a marketing agency wrote, but words that inspire people, influence people, and you go back to it continually. Everything you do is related to why you exist. And that came from Horst Schulze at the Ritz-Carlton. He also told me a very interesting thing. He told me that Truett Cathy with Chick-fil-A had come to see him. And Truett Cathy said he wanted to use, when you go to the Ritz-Carlton, they say, "My pleasure." Mm-hmm. And Truett Cathy said to Horst Schulze, "I'd really like to use my pleasure." And the reason Horst told me this is because he said, the more successful you get, the more you think you know things that you don't really know. Because Truett Cathy said, "I'm going to use my pleasure in my restaurants." And Horst said, "That won't fit in a food service sector." And of course, today, look at Chick-fil-A today. Yes. Chick-fil-A, they use those words, "my pleasure." It's part of their culture. It's embedded in their culture for service excellence. And you drive past a Chick-fil-A and then any other brand in their category, and there's 3 lines of cars around them, right? It's all about the people. So that's part of how we do it, Emma.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I was reading some information around the Ritz-Carlton and specifically around their focus of customer excellence. And part at the time, and this has been at least 10 years ago that I read it, it was part of their culture that every employee was empowered to fix whatever concern, we'll say, came to them from a guest. Mm-hmm. It literally was within their scope, and they were charged with, and they were embraced and empowered to not have to move that up the chain, to immediately just take care of that guest. And that is, that is just amazing. And it's why they have, the brand that they do is it is all about people and relationships.
Well, they're very disciplined. We happened to go to the Ritz-Carlton kind of intentionally because I wanted to be able to tell this story, but for this retreat. And they had these little cinnamon buns at breakfast that were just phenomenal. And everybody on our team were just raving over it. And they asked one of the gentlemen, could they leave them outside the room on the table where they were presenting breakfast for us. And they have a schedule where they had to come and take that away. They did not come and take it away. They changed the schedule and they stayed there all morning. And it's just those little, because those things are wows for customer. Usually they would say, no, we have to clear this by 10 o'clock because we have to set up for lunch, or, whatever that schedule is. But it was such a little thing. Didn't cost them any more money. It just meant they had to change their schedule to be able to do it. But that's the kind of, wow, that's servant leadership.
It is servant leadership, and it's all about finding ways to say yes.
Mm-hmm.
All about finding ways to say yes. So in your career, can you point to any strong mentors that you've had along the way?
My father. It always comes back to my father. And I've met other business leaders like Truett Cathy and Horst Schulze, but I think character is so essential. And my father, many times over the years, when I would hit a roadblock and I'd have a conversation with him, and he would always come back to tell me stories of things he had experienced in his career. And it always was an understanding of, no matter what the challenge was, there was an opportunity within it. And most of the time when those challenges came to you, if you look for the opportunity within them, you would grow, because you really do grow more. Now, I would not like to go through another 2 years like we've experienced with this pandemic, but I can point to growth opportunities for the childcare sector. I mean, childcare is recognized now as an essential service, and it was not prior to this pandemic. It wasn't until they were shut down, and even the essential workers, the healthcare workers, the firemen, the policemen couldn't go to work, until our federal government recognized childcare as an essential service. Today, in the legislation that they're negotiating, is a significant investment in childcare to help ensure all families can have it. And that wouldn't have happened if we hadn't gone through this pandemic. I don't think we would have had the will to do it, but now they realize it's an economic driver to the workforce. It's not just the future. And that's critical. It's about investing in the future for the children, for the future workforce, but it's about today's workforce. Women, a lot of the women that dropped out of the workforce, they can't go back to work because they can't find childcare.
Exactly. And that is so true. So with your dad, I mean, my dad was one of my mentors as well. And I remember one of the things that has stood with me as a test, for my career is, there's doing things right. Mm-hmm. There's times you do the right thing. Mm-hmm. And that's always been something that I've used in my approach to business is, there is doing things right. And there's protocols and systems and programs and policies and all that. However, at the end of the day, it's about doing the right thing. So can you point to anything with your dad as that in that mentor role that kind of has been your compass in your career?
So my dad gave me years ago a little owl, a little marble owl, and on the bottom it said, "Success is a journey, not a destination." And I think that's where the patience came from, right? And the belief that long term, you do have to have goals and aspirations, but you have to be willing to make the short term decisions that take you to the midterm, that take you to the long term. And I think we live in a world of instant gratification, and a lot of young leaders get very impatient if they can't accomplish their long-term goals quickly. And yes, there are entrepreneurs that are able to do that, but that isn't the norm. So, and I'm not a very patient person normally either. I want to make things happen. That's part of that drive. But the balance of drive and patience and persistence, those things truly did come from my father.
Those are lifelong lessons for sure. You mentioned earlier that, you've had a very wonderful career. I have as well. You also mentioned the pandemic.
Mhm.
What has it been? What have been some of the lessons that you've learned in the last couple of years in leading in? Everybody uses the words unprecedented. They truly have been in an environment like the pandemic. What have been some of the lessons that you've learned?
I think the biggest lesson that I've learned as we've grown the organization, we have brought on more leaders, and I told you we tried to recruit them so they were aligned with the values and the vision and the mission of the company. But in general, the leader of an organization, the culture and the continuity and consistency of beliefs emulate from the leader.
Mhm.
And in this pandemic, I at least personally felt that my leaders in my organization were lifting me up and actually creating rather than one leader being the leader of the organization, it calming people, ensuring people, focusing on the highest priorities, aligning to deep focus on highest priorities like health and safety, right? Communications with parents, etc. Those leaders had such a beautiful opportunity to step up and lead in ways they never led before. And I actually stepped back some and leaned on them. And I've never done that before. I think sometimes as leaders, we think we have to be the ones to do everything. And that comes from a little bit from my belief that, life isn't perfection and leaders aren't perfect. And being humble and admitting when you're tired and letting somebody else take the load, that builds collaboration and it does build a team. And it's in crisis. This is another one of those opportunities that come in crisis. People step up above and beyond what they've ever done before. And they feel the word empowered that you just used, they feel empowered. They put their stake in the ground about what they're able to do, and it makes the whole team stronger. I think that's my greatest belief. My greatest learning in this is I don't have to carry the load.
Yeah, similar in my situation as well. And I did find that in this pandemic, we, as a franchise business model, it is about relationships and trust and collaboration. And it is about supporting your franchisees, leading. I found that during this time, being a franchise business model was so incredibly helpful. I've often used the quote, "Sticks in a bundle remain unbroken." It's a Kenyan proverb. And that to me is franchising. You've got every office is independently owned and operated, yet you have this collaborative integration, common goal, and you band together. That sticks in a bundle. And through the pandemic, I felt like as an organization, there was this sense of urgency, but there was this sense of communal, togetherness, unlike anything that I had ever seen before in the 30 years that I've been in franchising. And it was incredibly uplifting. It was incredibly challenging. As you said, it's been the hardest couple of years of my career, yet it's also been a couple of the most rewarding.
Don't you hope, you think about and hear about what are you going to hold on to coming out of the pandemic? What are the things, what's the new normal going to be? And we all know there's challenges to, people working from home and the workforce shifts and recruiting labor and the skill sets you need and all those things. But I think not only did our leaders step up and their people below them step up in terms of the organizational structure of our national support team, but we too had such collaboration and engagement at the market level. The franchise owners came together, and then as a whole, they came together and shared market by market by market in ways individual franchise owners have never done, ever. and the strength that they gain from that. We've had a lot of conversations about how are we going to help them keep that, because that is when a brand gets really strong, when people aren't holding on to their best practices, but they're sharing them, where they're mentoring each other and they're all getting stronger together. That is, I mean, it takes a crisis. You have to get into a crisis to realize how important the people that we keep telling them, share your best practices, network with each other. And we facilitated a lot, but we've never seen it happen like it happened during this pandemic, very much like you. And I think every franchise organization most likely experienced that. And if you can hold on to that, I don't know what the secret sauce is to holding on to it, but we spent a good bit of time talking about that on our executive team. How do we intentionally hold on to that?
Yeah, I think in my career, we've seen economic downturns. This was totally different. I think during these times, and especially in this pandemic, it really showed who franchisors of choice were, and how they rose up, not I'm saying at the national support level, but as a brand, as an organization, as a network, as a collaboration, to really evolve, adapt, and thrive during a time that you typically would not going back to talking about an opportunity that comes out of something. This was truly an opportunity. And I agree with you, hanging on to that and identifying that secret sauce is going to be kind of you got to do it. We have to figure that out.
Yeah.
So if you were advising young women today about a career in franchising and how to be successful, you and I talked when we started, there really weren't a lot of women and definitely not in leadership positions, or there were very few in leadership positions. Our audience is women in franchising from all different types of franchises, young, seasoned in their careers, some that are looking for careers in franchising. What would be your advice to young women about a career in franchising and how to be successful?
Well, first of all, I believe in franchising because it's a win-win relationship. A franchisor can only be as successful as the franchisees. So we have every vested reason to help them drive their success. And their success is dependent on serving the customer, whatever the product or service is. It is a win-win situation when it's done right. And if it isn't done right, you don't see longevity in that franchise organization. So I believe franchising has such huge potential. If you look at so many products and services around within our country and globally have moved to the franchise model because you have an owner operator who has a vested interest. And if you're at the franchisor level, then how do you influence without authority is a key component of being a successful franchisor in the franchisor side of the business. How you influence without authority is by building trusted relationships. And how you build trusted relationships is by listening, having empathy, understanding where others are coming from. And I think that's critical. I also think the very same thing that we just talked about, the networking that happens with franchisees. For someone coming into this sector today, I would join a regional IFA meeting organization. I would be quiet and listen, and I would look at who are the leaders, and then I would get to know them, and I would learn everything I could from them. There is so much deep knowledge that you can gain by looking at people you admire and then getting to know them and letting them share with you how they've gotten where they are. And that's not necessarily something you're going to learn in a course. And even if you do, there's one thing to learn it in a course. It's another thing to see it in action. Seeing it in action, seeing leadership in action, seeing management in action, seeing positive growth, career growth for others in action, you will find over time that there's commonalities of those people and they're great listeners. They build trusted relationships. They network. They're transparent. They have empathy. Those are all skill sets that you have to invest in other people in order to gain that knowledge. And that would be my recommendation.
I think that's great advice. You answered one of the questions is, what's something on your bucket list you haven't done? So we all know it's visit all of the Ritz-Carltons, and that will be fun for you and Rick, and the time that you can get it done. So, we have a few minutes left. What brings you joy?
Well, clearly children. From the time I can remember, playing with dolls and loving dolls, and then I went to a Catholic school, and I loved the nuns because I thought they were good people that were doing good things, and I wanted to be just like them, until I realized that they didn't get married and they didn't have children, and that was like absolute was going to happen with me. My grandchildren, I have 2 grandchildren now, and they are absolutely my absolute joy. They are beyond. Having my own children was wonderful. Having grandchildren is beyond. But the other piece of that, so that's personal. On the business side, think that I have 60 to 70,000 children across the country and families that we are influencing on a day-to-day basis. I get so much personal satisfaction knowing all those women have, and men have, opportunities to have peace of mind when they leave their children, knowing that they're in good hands with people that care about them. Their children are safe, they're happy, and they're learning. And they're nurturing and growing a foundation that will be with them for life. Those are priceless joys. And I really feel blessed to. If I probably hadn't gone through the experience I had, which at the time I thought was catastrophic as a mom, trying to juggle career and family, I probably would never have been in this field. So sometimes the worst things that you experience lead you to your greatest joys.
That is so true. And I have it on the other end. You have 60 to 70,000 children. I get the honor of working in an organization that impacts the lives of our aging loved ones, that allows them to live as independent of a lifestyle as possible, and supporting families so they can still be a family, instead of providing all the care. And so our lives, we've talked about this from time to time, are similar, just in different kind of ends of the life journey. And so I get it, that every day you get to go home and look in the mirror and just be in awe of what you've been blessed to be able to do, and who you get to work with. And that is just priceless, for sure.
We both have that, and it's a real, but we both also made decisions in our careers about what was important to us. And this isn't the first position either of us ever had. We were both knowing what we wanted and kept moving forward intentionally to get to a place where we would be passionate about what we did and able to use our skill sets and grow a business, and also, as you said earlier, do the right thing.
Very much so. And I'm just so incredibly honored to get to work with the International Franchise Association, specifically the Women's Franchise Committee, as we get to talk to great leaders like yourself and help highlight successful female careers and leadership, and help younger women and anybody really interested in a career in franchising and growing into leadership roles, to see really good examples of what not just good, but what great looks like. And being able to have our listeners identify and reach out to individuals. And as you said, if you see them in meetings, watch them and see how they connect and see how they lead and form relationships. I mean, that's just all such an exciting endeavor for me. And I've been really honored to be able to do some of these interviews on behalf of the Women's Franchise Committee. Joe, I really want to thank you for your time. I am so grateful to you, to our friendship that we've formed over the years, and you taking time out of your schedule to spend some time with myself and our listeners, so that we can get to know you better and your leadership and your brand as well. So thank you so much.
It was an honor, Emma. Thank you for asking me, and I've really enjoyed it and appreciate it very much.